Victor Reese slammed his fist on the conference table so hard the coffee cups rattled. Find her. Find that pregnant woman. And make sure she never talks to anyone about what's in that bunker. He grabbed the younger agent by the collar, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his shouting. $42 million. Exposed. Because some homeless widow stumbled onto the biggest government secret of the Cold War. If this gets out, careers end. People go to prison. Do you understand what I'm telling you? The agent nodded, pale-faced. Reese released him. She has 72 hours to live. Make it look like an accident. The baby too, if necessary. Before we continue with Sarah Mitchell's incredible story, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow this journey to the very end. And please comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Sarah Mitchell pressed her hand against her swollen belly and felt her baby kick. 7 months pregnant, sitting in a rusted Honda Civic, parked in a Walmart parking lot at 4 in the morning. This was her life now. Her daughter Lily stirred in the back seat. Mommy, are we home yet? Sarah's throat tightened. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. We're safe. But they weren't safe. They weren't home. They hadn't been home in 14 days. She checked her phone. The battery icon showed 8%. The bank app showed $7.84. The gas gauge needle had been sitting on empty for the last 6 miles. God, she whispered. What am I supposed to do? 8 months ago, Sarah had been a pediatric nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital in Las Vegas. She had worked there for 8 years. She had held dying children. She had comforted grieving parents. She had saved lives. Now she couldn't save her own family. Her husband Derek had died on September 14th. A drunk driver ran a red light at 67 miles per hour. Derek's truck rolled 4 times. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Sarah didn't get to say goodbye. She didn't get to tell him about the pregnancy. She had been planning to surprise him that weekend with a cake that said Daddy again in blue frosting. The drunk driver walked away with minor injuries. He was out on bail within 48 hours. After the funeral, Sarah filed the life insurance claim. $200,000. Enough to pay off the house, secure Lily's future, give them time to grieve. 3 weeks later, the denial letter arrived. We regret to inform you that due to an undisclosed occupation change, your claim has been denied. Sarah had called the insurance company 17 times. She had spoken to 14 different representatives. She had begged, pleaded, threatened legal action. Nothing worked. She hired a lawyer. He took $3,000 and then stopped returning her calls. Meanwhile, the pregnancy complications started. Placenta previa. The doctor ordered modified bed rest. No more 12-hour shifts, he said. No standing for extended periods. If you push yourself, you risk losing the baby. Sarah went to her supervisor at the hospital. I need accommodation, light duty, anything. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia, who had known Sarah for 8 years, looked at her with something that might have been sympathy but felt like pity. Sarah, you know I love you, but the hospital can't accommodate someone who can't perform essential job functions. You can take unpaid medical leave, 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, you'll need to return to full duty or resign. 6 weeks turned into 8. Sarah's condition didn't improve. The hospital sent a letter. Dear Ms. Mitchell, we regret to inform you that your position has been terminated due to inability to perform essential job functions. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. The dominoes started falling. First the car payment went late, then the utilities, then the mortgage. Sarah sold Derek's truck. She sold her jewelry. She sold the furniture piece by piece on Facebook Marketplace. A stranger came to buy the couch where Derek used to fall asleep watching football. Sarah watched him carry it out the door and felt something inside her break. The house sold at auction in January. The bank took everything except $4,200. Sarah did the math. First month's rent on a cheap apartment, $1,500. Security deposit, $1,500. That left $1,200 for everything else. But with no job, no income, and a baby coming in 2 months, no landlord would approve her application. She applied for emergency housing assistance. Waiting list 8 to 14 months. She applied for Section 8. Waiting list 2 to 3 years. She called every shelter in Las Vegas. The family shelters were full. The women's shelters could take her, but not Lily. I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't have facilities for children over 5. You'll need to contact Child Protective Services to arrange temporary placement for your daughter. You want me to give up my daughter? It's temporary, ma'am, until you get back on your feet. Sarah hung up the phone. She would never give up Lily. Not for 1 night, not for 1 hour, not ever. So she packed what they could fit in the Honda. She drove to a Walmart parking lot, and she started the clock. Day 1, Day 2, Day 7, Day 14, Now, here she sat 7 months pregnant, 6-year-old daughter in the back seat, $7 to her name, watching the frost form on the windshield. Like frozen tears. Her phone buzzed, a notification. She almost ignored it. Probably spam, probably a bill collector, but something made her look. Subject line, Urgent Estate Matter, Mitchell Family Trust, response required within 72 hours. Sarah opened the email. Dear Mrs. Sarah Mitchell, we are writing to inform you that you have been identified as the sole surviving beneficiary of the estate of Harold Raymond Mitchell, who passed away on January 15, 2024, in Sweetgrass County, Montana. Sarah read the email 3 times. Harold Mitchell. The name was vaguely familiar. Derek had mentioned him once or twice. The crazy uncle. The doomsday prepper, the one who had built some kind of bunker in the mountains and disappeared 40 years ago. The email continued. The estate includes one underground shelter structure constructed circa 1961, 47 acres of unimproved land, estimated total value $500. $500. An underground shelter? Sarah almost laughed. Almost cried. Almost deleted the email and went back to trying to figure out how to survive another day. But then she read the last paragraph. Due to the specific terms of Mr. Mitchell's will, you are required to take physical possession of the property within 30 days or the estate will be transferred to the state of Montana. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience. 47 acres. Land? Real land. Something that couldn't be foreclosed. Something that couldn't be denied by insurance companies or terminated by hospitals or sold at auction. Something solid. Sarah looked at her sleeping daughter. She looked at her pregnant belly. She looked at the frost on the windshield. Okay, Harold, she whispered down. I don't know who you were, but I'm coming. At 6:47 in the morning, when the Walmart opened, Sarah walked inside on swollen feet. She found the customer service desk. She asked to use their phone. It's long distance, Montana. I'll be quick, please. The teenager behind the counter looked at her. Pregnant, exhausted, desperate. Yeah, he said. Go ahead. Take your time. Sarah dialed. Walsh & Associates, this is Eugene. Mr. Walsh, my name is Sarah Mitchell. You sent me an email about an inheritance. Mrs. Mitchell. The voice on the other end was warm, relieved. I'm very glad you called. I was worried we wouldn't reach you in time. Is this real? This isn't a scam. It's very real. Your uncle left you everything he had. He wasn't my uncle. He was my husband's uncle. I never even met him. He knew about you, Mrs. Mitchell. He had a private investigator send him updates every few years. He knew when you married Derek. He knew when Lily was born. He knew when Derek passed. Walsh paused. I'm sorry for your loss. Sarah gripped the phone tighter. Why me? Why would a stranger leave me his estate? I asked him that once. He said, Derek's young. He's got time, but his wife is a nurse. She takes care of people. Someday she might need someone to take care of her. When that day comes, I want her to have somewhere to go. Sarah started crying. Right there in the Walmart customer service area. I don't have money for gas to get there. I don't have anything. I'm going to wire you $800, Mrs. Mitchell. Consider it an advance against the estate. That should be enough for gas, food, and a motel room when you arrive. Why would you do that? You don't know me. Because Harold asked me to take care of whoever came after him, and because my wife was a nurse too, for 41 years. His voice softened. Come to Montana, Mrs. Mitchell. Come and see what Harry left you. I think you might be surprised. Sarah picked up the wire transfer at a Western Union that afternoon. She filled the gas tank. She bought Lily a hot meal for the first time in 2 weeks. And she started driving. 22 hours. Through Nevada, Utah, Wyoming. Through snowstorms and mountain passes, and the kind of darkness that only exists in the middle of nowhere. Lily slept most of the way. When she woke, she asked questions. Where are we going, Mommy? Montana. What's in Montana? A house, maybe, I hope. Is it our house? Sarah glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror. It might be, baby. It just might be. They arrived in Willow Creek, Montana at noon the next day. Population 847. The town looked like a postcard from 1962. Eugene Walsh's office was above a taxidermy shop on Main Street. Sarah climbed the stairs slowly, her back aching, her feet swollen. Lily holding her hand. Walsh was 74 years old, white-haired, with kind eyes, behind thick glasses. His office smelled like old paper and coffee. Mrs. Mitchell? He stood to greet her. Please sit down, you look exhausted. 22 hours of driving. With a 6-year-old and 7 months pregnant, you're either very brave or very desperate. Both, Sarah said. Definitely both. Walsh spread documents across his desk. Maps, property records, a will. Harold was particular, Walsh said. He lived alone on that mountain for 43 years. Never married, never had visitors. Paid his property taxes in cash every January 2nd like clockwork. How did he die? Peacefully, in his chair, like he was waiting for something. Walsh handed her a sealed envelope. He left this for you. Instructions were to open it only at the shelter. Sarah looked at the envelope. On the front, in precise handwriting, for Sarah, open only at the shelter. Inside was a brass key and a note. The surface is a lie. Truth lives below. Don't trust the men in gray suits. Men in gray suits. Sarah looked at Walsh. Something flickered in his eyes. Harry believed the government was watching him. For 60 years he believed that. Most folks thought he was paranoid. Walsh paused. But Harry was a very smart man. Whatever he was hiding from, he took it seriously. Walsh gave her directions to the property. 12 miles north. 4 miles west on a dirt road, 2 more miles through forest. Cell service doesn't reach up there, he warned. Power lines don't either. Whatever you find, you'll be on your own. Sarah thanked him. She took the key, the envelope, the maps. At the door, she turned back. Mr. Walsh, did you know him well? Walsh was quiet for a moment. I was his lawyer for 43 years. I was also, I think, his only friend. He looked at Sarah. Last January, he sat in that chair and said, Eugene, I think this is the last time. I asked him if he was sick. He said, no, I'm just finished waiting. Whoever comes after me, take care of them. Waiting for what? Walsh looked at her pregnant belly, her tired eyes, her daughter standing quietly at her side. I think he was waiting for you. The dirt road ended at a wall of pine trees. Beyond it, barely visible through decades of overgrowth, was a small wooden cabin. Sarah parked the car. She sat for a moment, just looking. 47 acres, hers. Mommy, Lily's voice was small. Is this really our house? I think so, baby. Let's go see. The cabin was simple. One room with a potbelly stove, a small kitchen, a bedroom with a narrow bed. Everything covered in dust, but orderly. On the table sat a leather journal. A note was tucked inside. Read this when you're ready, not before. Sarah set it aside. There would be time for reading later. Behind the cabin, hidden beneath fallen leaves, she found it. A concrete slab, a steel hatch. The brass key fit the lock perfectly. The hatch opened with a groan. Cold air rushed up from the darkness below. Mommy, I'm scared. Sarah knelt down. Me too, baby. But sometimes we have to go into dark places to find what we need. Can you be brave with me? Lily nodded. Stay here, right by the ladder. Don't move. Sarah descended. The shelter was massive. 2,000 square feet. Emergency lights flickered on as she stepped off the ladder. A generator hummed to life after decades of sleep. The main room held supplies. Canned goods, medical kits, tools. Everything labeled in precise handwriting. Peaches, 1962. Bandages, 1988. But it was the second room that stopped her cold. Filing cabinets, dozens of them. And on one wall, photographs and Birkin documents connected by red string. Faces, buildings, papers stamped classified. Harold Mitchell hadn't been crazy. He'd been hiding something. And at the far end of the shelter, behind a steel door with a combination lock, was whatever he'd been protecting all these years. Sarah's phone was almost dead, but she had enough battery to take one photo of the wall, the filing cabinets, the locked door. Evidence, just in case. She climbed back up the ladder. Lily was waiting exactly where she'd left her. What's down there, Mommy? Sarah thought about the documents, the locked door. The 43 years Harold had spent hiding in this mountain. I'm not sure yet, sweetheart, but I think Great-Uncle Harold left us something important. That night, they slept in the cabin. Sarah built a fire in the potbelly stove. Lily curled up on the narrow bed with her one-eared rabbit, and Sarah sat at the table, opened the leather journal, and began to read. The first entry was dated November 2nd, 1961. They told me today that the project is approved. GOLDVAULT. I wish I could feel proud. Instead, I feel like I've helped build a tomb for the country I love. Sarah turned the page. We're hiding $4 billion in assets across 12 locations, all to preserve American wealth in case the Soviets launch first. The president himself signed the order. I designed the Montana site. $4 billion. Sarah's hands started shaking. She kept reading. June 15, 1973. Something is wrong. The quarterly audit doesn't match. $40 million is unaccounted for. I reported it to Director Carlson. He told me to forget I ever saw those numbers. September 3rd, 1977. They killed Marcus. Car accident, they said. But Marcus didn't drink. Marcus didn't speed. Marcus was my friend, and he was asking the same questions I was asking. December 28, 1979. I've made my decision. I can't expose them from the inside, but I can document everything. I can wait. Someday the right person will come along. Sarah closed the journal. Her heart was pounding. Harold Mitchell hadn't been a paranoid hermit. He'd been a whistleblower, a witness, a man who had spent 43 years gathering evidence of government corruption and murder, and he'd left it all to her. The locked door, the combination lock. Whatever was behind that door had been worth killing for, worth hiding for 4 decades. Sarah looked at her sleeping daughter. She pressed her hand against her belly and felt her son kick. She had come here looking for a place to live. She had found something else entirely, and somewhere out there Victor Reese was already looking for her. The next morning, Sarah went back down into the shelter. The journal had more entries, hundreds of pages, 43 years of observations, theories, fears. She found the entry she was looking for. January 15th, 2020. I've set the final combination, something I'll never forget, something that connects me to the family I never had. The combination is simple Lily's birthday. If Sarah ever comes, she'll know. A mother always knows her daughter's birthday. Sarah walked to the steel door. Her fingers trembled. 09/04/2017. She entered the numbers. A click, a mechanical release. The door swung open. The room beyond was small, maybe 200 square feet. But what it contained was worth more than Sarah could comprehend. 12 steel boxes sat on heavy-duty shelving. She opened the first one. Gold coins. Hundreds of them. American gold eagles? Canadian maple leafs. They gleamed under the emergency lights. The second box held silver bars, 100 ounces each. The third box held currency, stacks of $100 bills, and beneath them, bearer bonds. $10,000 denominations. Dated 1962, Sarah opened box after box. Gold, silver, bonds, currency, a fortune. Box 11 contained documents, original classified files, transfer orders with signatures, bank records, evidence. Box 12 contained a ledger, Harold's final accounting. Gold coins 1/247 pieces, estimated value $7,400,000. Silver bars 340 pieces, estimated value $850,000. Bearer bonds, face value $18,000 to $1,000. U.S. currency $4,200,000. Swiss account access codes, 3 accounts. Last known balance $12,000 to $1,000. Total estimated minimum value $42,000 to $1,000. Sarah sat on the floor of the vault, surrounded by $42 million, and started to laugh. Yesterday she had $7. Today she was sitting on a fortune. The laughter turned to tears. Then to something else? Fear, because she understood now. The men who had stolen this money, the men who had killed to keep it secret, they would come for her. Harold had spent 43 years hiding from them. Now they would find her. She was a pregnant widow with a 6-year-old daughter hiding in a bunker with $42 million in stolen government assets. If the wrong people found out, she would disappear. Lily would become a ward of the state. Her unborn son would be born in a federal prison, if she lived that long. Sarah pressed her hand against her belly. Her son kicked. "What do I do, Harold?" she whispered. "What do I do now?" The answer was in the journal. The last page. "Don't waste this, Sarah. Don't let them bury the truth again. But be careful. They killed my friends. They'll kill you too if they find out what you have. Trust no one from the government. Find allies outside the system. And whatever you do, don't let them win." Shit. Sarah closed the journal. She had $42 million. She had evidence of government corruption. She had a target on her back. And she had 72 hours before Victor Reese found her. For 2 weeks, Sarah said nothing to anyone. She and Lily lived in the shelter, venturing to Willow Creek only for supplies. She paid cash, small bills from the vault, nothing suspicious. She bought groceries, propane, batteries. She smiled at the cashiers. She pretended to be just another struggling single mother trying to make it through the winter. At night, after Lily fell asleep, Sarah read the journal cover to cover. She learned about GOLDVAULT, the secret program created in 1961 to hide American wealth in case of nuclear war. 12 locations across the country. Billions of dollars in gold bonds currency. She learned about the theft, how the men who controlled GOLDVAULT realized they were sitting on a fortune no one else knew about, how they started siphoning funds. A few million here, a few million there. By 1979, an estimated $2.8 billion had been stolen. She learned about the murders. Marcus Webb, 1977. Car accident. Thomas Chen, 1983. Heart attack at 41. Diana Forrester, 1991. Suicide her family never believed. All of them had asked questions about GOLDVAULT. All of them had died before finding answers. Harold survived because he had leverage. Copies of documents with signatures that could destroy careers. Mutually assured destruction. But that leverage died with him. Now Sarah had the evidence. But she didn't have Harold's protection. She needed help. On the 15th day, she drove into Willow Creek and found a payphone. She had a list of names from the journal. People Harold had considered trustworthy. The first name Margaret Chen, daughter of Thomas Chen. Sarah dialed. Margaret Chen's office. I need to speak with Ms. Chen. It's about her father. It's about GOLDVAULT. Silence. Then, hold please. 30 seconds later, a woman's voice came on the line. Sharp, guarded. Who is this? How do you know that name? My name is Sarah Mitchell. My uncle was Harold Mitchell. He worked with your father. He left me everything, including the evidence. Evidence of what? Everything. The theft, the cover-up, your father's murder. Margaret was quiet for a long time. Where are you? Montana, a town called Willow Creek. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. Don't use your phone. I'll be there in 12 hours. How do I know I can trust you? You don't, but I've spent 30 years trying to find out what really happened to my father. If you have what you say you have, you're the answer to every question I've ever asked. Margaret arrived at 11 that night. She was in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that assessed everything. Sarah met her at the cabin. You're pregnant, Margaret observed. 7.5 months. Well, and you've been living in a Cold War bunker with a 6-year-old. It's better than a parking lot. Margaret looked at her for a long moment. Harold chose well. Show me. In the vault, Margaret moved through the boxes like a surgeon, precise, methodical. Her hands trembled when she reached the documents. This is my father's handwriting, she said. October 12, 1982, 6 months before he died. Harold's journal says your father was asking questions. The coroner said heart attack. My mother never believed it. Margaret's voice cracked. I was 22 when he died. I became a lawyer because of him. And now... Margaret set down the document. Now I'm looking at the most significant trove of classified evidence in American history. She turned to Sarah. Do you understand what this means? It could expose them. It could bring down some of the most powerful people in Washington. Living people. People who have spent 60 years making problems disappear. Margaret's gaze was steady. The moment you try to use this evidence, you become their biggest problem. Sarah felt the baby kick. So what do I do? Hide forever, like Harold did? You could. Take a few million in gold, disappear live somewhere, they'll never find you. Is that what you would do? Margaret smiled. The first smile Sarah had seen from her. No, I'd burn them to the ground. Then help me. I will, but we need more allies. We need a journalist. Someone who can make this story too big to bury. Margaret took out her phone. His name is Thomas Wright, Washington Herald. He's been chasing Cold War financial crimes for 20 years. She dialed. Thomas, it's Margaret Chen. I found it. Everything my father was looking for. I'm in Montana with a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She has Harold Mitchell's files. A pause. Yes, that Harold Mitchell. Get on a plane. Tonight. Thomas Wright arrived at dawn. 60 years old, rumpled, hungry eyes. In the vault, he wept. 30 years, he said. 30 years I've known something was wrong. Sources who disappeared. Documents that were lost. He looked at Sarah. Your uncle was the bravest man I never met. Can you publish this? Not yet. If I publish now, they'll bury it. We need to control the narrative. We need to make this so big they can't suppress it. They spent 3 days preparing. Thomas photographed every document. Margaret filed legal protections. They created encrypted files and distributed them to journalists around the world. A dead man's switch. If Sarah disappeared, everything would be released automatically. On the 4th day, the black SUVs arrived. Sarah was in town buying supplies when she saw them. 3 black Suburbans with government plates. Men in gray suits. Her heart stopped. She walked calmly to her car, drove at exactly the speed limit back to the mountain road. They were already waiting. 2 SUVs blocked the dirt path. A man stood beside them. Tall, cold eyes, gray suit. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Victor Reese, Department of Treasury." Sarah stayed in her car. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Your uncle illegally removed classified materials when he left government service. Those materials are government property. We're here to recover them." "Do you have a warrant?" "We don't need a warrant for national security matters." "Then I don't need to let you on my property." Reese's smile disappeared. "Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you're in a difficult situation. Pregnant, widowed, a daughter to care for." He stepped closer. "Federal detention facilities aren't kind to pregnant women, and Child Protective Services has experience placing children whose parents have been convicted of federal crimes." Sarah felt the fear. Cold, paralyzing. Then she thought of Harold. 43 years of hiding. "Come back with a warrant," she said, "and a camera crew. Because if you try to force your way onto my land, every news outlet in Montana will be here before you can say national security." Reese studied her. "You have 48 hours. Use them wisely." The SUVs pulled away. Sarah drove to the cabin and collapsed against the steering wheel. In the bunker below, Margaret and Thomas had heard everything. "We need to go public," Thomas said. "Now, today." The next 36 hours were chaos. Thomas flew back to Washington. Margaret filed emergency motions. Sarah gave a single disguised interview to a local journalist. At 6 in the morning on the second day, the Washington Herald published "GOLDVAULT, the Cold War cover-up that stole billions." By noon, it was the most read article on the internet. By 3, every major network was leading with the story. By 6, the hashtag GOLDVAULT was trending worldwide, and at the center of it all, a pregnant widow in Montana standing alone against the federal government. Reese returned on the third day. 20 agents, armored vehicles, a warrant, but he also found 200 people blocking the road to Sarah's property, locals from Willow Creek, veterans, teachers, parents, Americans who had seen a pregnant woman stand up to bullies and decided to stand with her. "Get out of the way," Reese ordered. "This is federal property now." "No," said Eugene Walsh, standing at the front despite his 74 years. "This is Sarah Mitchell's property, and we're not moving." The standoff lasted 9 days. 9 days of negotiations, threats, revelations. On day 8, Sarah went into labor. The baby came 3 weeks early, in the back of an ambulance surrounded by federal agents and news cameras. A boy, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She named him Harold Derek Mitchell. On day 9, with a newborn in her arms and the world watching, Sarah received a phone call. The Attorney General wanted to make a deal. The phone kept ringing in Sarah's hand. Attorney General. Those 2 words burned in her mind like fire. Margaret grabbed her arm. "Don't answer it, not yet." "Why not?" "Because the moment you pick up that phone, you lose leverage. Let them sweat." Sarah looked at the newborn in her arms. Harold Derek Mitchell, 8 hours old, born in the back of an ambulance while federal agents surrounded her property. The phone stopped ringing, then started again. Thomas Wright burst through the cabin door. "Turn on the news, now!" Margaret found the old radio in the corner. Static crackled, then voices. "Breaking news from Montana, where a 9-day standoff between federal agents and a pregnant widow has taken a dramatic turn. Sarah Mitchell, who inherited a Cold War bunker from her late uncle, gave birth this morning while surrounded by federal agents. The Attorney General's office has now issued a statement saying they want to negotiate." Sarah laughed. It hurt. Everything hurt. "They're scared," Thomas said. "The whole country is watching. They can't just make you disappear now." "Can they?" Nobody answered. Lily appeared in the doorway. 6 years old, eyes wide. "Mommy, is that my baby brother?" Sarah held out her free arm. Lily crawled onto the bed beside her. She was careful not to jostle the baby. "His name is Harold," Sarah said, "after the man who saved us." "The man who built the underground house." "Yes, sweetheart, the man who built the underground house." Lily looked at the baby. "He's really small. He'll get bigger." "Will the bad men go away now?" Sarah looked at Margaret. Margaret looked at Thomas. Nobody had an answer for that either. The phone rang again. This time Sarah answered. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Deputy Attorney General Raymond Foster. I'm calling on behalf of the Attorney General's office." "I'm listening." "We'd like to propose a meeting, neutral ground, to discuss a resolution that benefits everyone." "A resolution? You mean you want me to hand over the evidence and keep my mouth shut?" Silence on the other end. "Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you've been through a difficult experience, but you're in possession of classified government materials. That's a federal crime. The crime was committed by your predecessors, Mr. Foster. Billions of dollars stolen from the American people. People murdered to keep it secret. I have the proof. You have documents that were illegally removed from government custody. I have evidence of corruption at the highest levels. Mrs. Mitchell. Foster's voice hardened. You're a widow with a newborn and a 6-year-old daughter. You have no job, no income, no resources. Do you really want to spend the next 10 years fighting the federal government in court? Sarah felt the fear grip her chest. He was right. She had nothing. She was nothing. Then she looked at Lily, at baby Harold. I have the truth, Mr. Foster. And I have 200 people outside my property who believe me. How many people believe you? Another silence. What do you want, Mrs. Mitchell? I want a meeting, face to face. You bring your lawyers, I'll bring mine, and we'll talk about what happens next. When? Tomorrow, 10 in the morning, Willow Creek Community Center, and Mr. Foster, if anything happens to me or my family before that meeting, every news outlet in the world will receive the complete contents of that vault within the hour. She hung up. Margaret stared at her. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. You realize they could arrest you the moment you walk into that meeting. They could, but they won't. How do you know? Sarah looked at her son, 8 hours old, already fighting for survival, just like his mother. Because Harold waited 43 years for someone to finish what he started. I'm not going to let him down. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. The baby needed feeding every 2 hours. The stitches from the delivery ached, and her mind wouldn't stop racing. $42 million. Evidence of corruption. A meeting with federal officials tomorrow morning. 3 weeks ago, she had been sleeping in a car. At 2 in the morning, she climbed down into the shelter. The vault door was still open. The gold still gleamed under the emergency lights. Sarah sat at Harold's desk and opened the journal to a page she had marked. March 15, 1985. I've been hiding for 6 years now. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. I could have stayed. I could have kept my head down, collected my pension, pretended nothing was wrong. But every time I think about Marcus, about the way they made his murder look like an accident, I know I couldn't have lived with myself. Some secrets are too dangerous to keep. Some truths are worth dying for. Sarah turned the page. December 25th, 1991, Christmas alone again. The radio says Diana Forrester killed herself last week. Jumped from her apartment balcony, they said. But Diana was afraid of heights. She couldn't even climb a ladder. They killed her because she was getting too close to the truth. I'm adding her name to the list. 17 people now. 17 people who died because they asked questions. 17 people. Sarah thought about her daughter upstairs, her newborn son. Was she putting them in danger by fighting back, or was she protecting them by exposing the truth? She didn't know anymore. At 5 in the morning, Margaret found her in the vault. You should be resting. I can't rest, not with everything that's happening. Margaret sat down across from her. I need to tell you something I should have told you before. Sarah's heart clenched. What? When I was 22, right after my father died, 2 men came to our house. They said they were from the government. They said my father had been involved in some irregular activities before his death. They offered my mother money to forget about any questions she might have. What did she do? She took the money, $50,000, enough to pay off the house and send me to law school. Margaret's voice cracked. She made me promise never to look into my father's death. She said if I did, they would come back, and next time they wouldn't be offering money. But you looked anyway. I couldn't help it. My father was the most honest man I ever knew. The idea that he was involved in something corrupt, it didn't make sense. So I started digging. Quietly. Carefully. For 30 years. Margaret met Sarah's eyes. I found pieces, rumors, dead ends. But I never found proof. Until you. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to understand what we're dealing with. These people have been covering their tracks for 60 years. They've killed at least 17 people. They paid off my mother to keep her quiet, and they're not going to stop just because we have evidence. Sarah looked at the filing cabinets, the photographs on the wall, the red strings connecting decades of corruption. So what do? We go to that meeting tomorrow. We show them we're not afraid, and we make them an offer they can't refuse. What kind of offer? Margaret smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The kind that keeps us alive. At 9:30 the next morning, Sarah walked into the Willow Creek Community Center. She carried baby Harold in a sling against her chest. Lily held her hand. Margaret walked on her right side. Thomas Wright walked on her left. The room was packed. Federal agents in dark suits lined the walls. Local reporters crowded behind a rope barrier. Eugene Walsh sat at a table in the corner looking like he hadn't slept in days. At the front of the room, 3 people waited. Deputy Attorney General Raymond Foster was exactly what Sarah had expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the face of a man who had spent his career making problems disappear. Beside him sat a woman Sarah didn't recognize. Blonde, cold eyes, legal pad in front of her, and at the end of the table, Victor Reese. Sarah's blood went cold. Reese smiled at her, the same smile he had worn when he threatened to put her in federal detention. "Mrs. Mitchell?" Foster stood. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Sarah didn't move. "What is he doing here?" "Agent Reese is part of our recovery team." "Agent Reese threatened to take my daughter and put me in prison. He threatened to kill me." "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. He stood on my property 4 days ago and told me I had 72 hours. Those were his exact words. And I've seen his name in my uncle's files. He's been part of this cover-up for at least 15 years. The room went silent. Foster's face didn't change. "Those are serious allegations, Mrs. Mitchell." "I have documents with his signature on them. Transfer orders from 2009. $2 million moved from GOLDVAULT accounts to a shell company in the Cayman Islands." Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "Would you like to see them?" Reese's smile vanished. Foster looked at the folder. At Reese, back at Sarah. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No, everything I have to say I'll say in front of these witnesses." Sarah gestured to the reporters. "You wanted a meeting? Here I am. Now let's talk about what happens next." Foster sat down slowly. "Very well. What do you want?" "I want the truth about GOLDVAULT made public. Every document, every transfer, every name." "That's not possible. Much of that information is still classified for national security reasons." "National security? You mean protecting the criminals who stole billions of dollars?" "I mean protecting ongoing investigations and sensitive sources." Sarah laughed. "There are no ongoing investigations. There haven't been for 60 years. You've spent 6 decades burying this." "Mrs. Mitchell, even if what you're saying is true, the people responsible are mostly dead. What good does exposing them now accomplish?" "Mostly dead, but not all. Some of them are still alive. Some of them are still in positions of power." Sarah looked at Reese. "Some of them are in this room." Reese stood up. "I don't have to listen to this." "Sit down." Foster's voice was sharp. Reese hesitated, then sat. Foster turned back to Sarah. "What exactly are you proposing?" Margaret stepped forward. "We're proposing a settlement. Mrs. Mitchell returns the physical assets, gold, silver, bonds, currency. In exchange, she receives a finder's fee of $18 million. Harold Mitchell is posthumously cleared of all charges, and the Department of Justice issues a public statement acknowledging historical irregularities in the GOLDVAULT program." $18 million. "Standard finder's fee is 10% of recovered assets. We're being generous." Foster looked at the woman beside him. She nodded slightly. "And the documents, the classified files?" "The original documents are returned to government custody. However, copies have already been distributed to journalists and legal representatives around the world. Those copies will be destroyed only after the settlement is finalized and Mrs. Mitchell's safety is guaranteed." "You're blackmailing the federal government." "We're negotiating. There's a difference." Foster was quiet for a long moment. "I need to make a phone call." He stood and walked to the corner of the room. The blonde woman followed. They spoke in low voices, occasionally glancing at Sarah. Reese stayed at the table. His eyes never left Sarah's face. "You think you've won?" he said quietly. "You haven't." "I'm still here. My family is still safe. That's winning enough." "For now, but people like you, people who think they can expose the truth and walk away, they always underestimate how far some people will go to protect themselves." "Is that a threat?" "It's an observation. Harold Mitchell hid for 43 years. In the end, he still died alone on a mountain with nobody to remember him." Sarah felt the baby stir against her chest. "He's remembered now, and so will you be. When those documents go public, everyone will know your name. Everyone will know what you did." Reese's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to respond. Foster returned to the table. "The Attorney General has agreed to your terms, with one modification." "What modification?" "The public statement will acknowledge historical irregularities found without naming specific individuals, and there will be a non-disclosure clause preventing Mrs. Mitchell from discussing specific details of the GOLDVAULT program." Margaret shook her head. That's not acceptable. The whole point is accountability. The whole point is survival, Ms. Chen. Mrs. Mitchell gets $18 million immunity and her life. In exchange, she agrees not to pursue criminal charges against individuals who may or may not still be alive. Foster leaned forward. Take the deal. It's the best you're going to get. Sarah looked at Margaret. Margaret looked at Thomas. Thomas spoke for the first time. The story is already out there. The Herald has published everything. Other outlets have picked it up. Even with a non-disclosure agreement, the truth is public now. But without Mrs. Mitchell's testimony, without her cooperation, any future investigation will stall. Maybe, or maybe the documents speak for themselves. Sarah thought about Harold. 43 years of hiding, waiting for someone to finish what he started. Was this finishing it, settling for money and silence, or was this the best she could do for her children? She thought about Lily, about the parking lots, the hunger, the fear. She thought about baby Harold, 8 hours old, already caught up in a battle that started before his mother was born. I want one more thing, Sarah said. Foster raised an eyebrow. You're not in a position to negotiate. I want Agent Reese removed from duty, immediately, and I want a formal investigation into his conduct. That's not part of this deal. Then there is no deal. Silence. Reese's face had gone pale. You can't do this. Watch me. Sarah turned to Foster. He threatened a pregnant woman. He threatened to take my child. He's been part of this cover-up for at least 15 years. If you want me to sign anything, he pays a price. Foster looked at Reese. Something passed between them, something Sarah couldn't read. Agent Reese will be reassigned pending an internal review. Not good enough. I want it public. I want it on the record. Mrs. Mitchell, there are limits to what I can promise. Then we're done here. Sarah started to stand. Wait. Foster held up his hand. Agent Reese will be placed on administrative leave. The Office of Professional Responsibility will conduct a formal investigation. The results will be made public. Sarah looked at Reese. For the first time since she had met him, he looked afraid. Agreed? Margaret pulled out a document. We have a draft settlement prepared. Review it. Make your changes. We'll finalize everything within 48 hours. Foster took the document. This isn't over, you know. The people above me, the people who really control things, they don't forgive and they don't forget. Neither do I. Sarah turned and walked out of the community center, Lily's hand in hers. Baby Harold against her chest. Margaret and Thomas flanking her like bodyguards. Outside, 200 people were still waiting. They had been there for 9 days, sleeping in cars and tents in the parking lot of Mabel's diner. When they saw Sarah, they started cheering. Eugene Walsh pushed through the crowd. Well, we got a deal. 18 million. Harold's name cleared. Reese under investigation. Walsh's eyes filled with tears. Harry would be proud. I hope so. That night, Sarah sat in the cabin with her children. Lily was asleep on the narrow bed, one arm draped over her new brother. Baby Harold made soft sounds in his sleep, his tiny fists curled. Sarah held Harold's journal in her hand. She turned to the last entry. January 14th, 2024. Tomorrow will be my last day. I can feel it. The heart is giving out, but I'm not afraid. I've done what I could. I've waited as long as I can. Now it's someone else's turn. Sarah, if you're reading this, know that I never stopped believing someone would come. Know that everything I did for family I never met but always loved. And know that the truth is worth fighting for, even when it costs everything, even when it takes a lifetime. Don't waste the shelter. Don't waste the truth. And don't waste your life hiding like I did. Live, fight, love, and when it's over, let someone else carry the torch. That's all any of us can do, with all my hope, Harold. Sarah closed the journal. Outside, she could hear the last of the protesters packing up. The standoff was over. The deal was done. But she knew it wasn't really finished. The people Foster had mentioned, the ones who really controlled things, they were still out there, still watching, still waiting. And they would come for her again. But not tonight. Tonight, her children were safe. Tonight, she had won. Tomorrow, she would start building something new. She walked to the window and looked out at the mountain that had sheltered Harold for 43 years. I didn't waste it, she whispered. I promise you, Harold. I didn't waste it. Chipwheel. The settlement papers arrived 3 days later. $18 million. Full immunity. Harold's posthumous exoneration. Reese's suspension. Sarah read every word. Margaret checked every clause. Thomas documented everything. At 4 p.m, Sarah signed her name. The money would be transferred within 7 days. The gold, silver, and bonds would be collected by federal agents within 14 days, and life would go on. But Sarah knew better than to believe it was really over. That night, she received a call from a blocked number. "Mrs. Mitchell, congratulations on your settlement." "Who is this, a friend or an enemy, depending on how the next few minutes go?" Sarah's heart started pounding. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. The documents you have, the evidence Harold gathered, to come out, it's only part of the story. There are 2 more vaults out there, 2 more locations Harold designed. And the people who stole from Gold Vault, they've been looking for those vaults for 60 years. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Harold trusted you, and because I trusted Harold." The voice paused. "There's a safety deposit box in Helena, First National Bank, box 774. Harold paid the fees through 2030. Whatever's inside, he meant for you to have it." "Who are you?" "Someone who's been waiting almost as long as Harold was. Goodbye, Mrs. Mitchell, and be careful. The people you've angered, they have very long memories." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. 2 more vaults, a safety deposit box in Helena, and a warning about people with long memories. Harold's legacy wasn't finished. Not by a long way. She looked at her sleeping children, at the cabin that had become home, at the mountain that had kept secrets for 60 years. And she made a decision. Tomorrow she would drive to Helena. Tomorrow she would find out what else Harold had left behind. Tomorrow the real fight would begin. 3 days after signing the settlement, Sarah drove to Helena. She left Lily with Eugene Walsh and his wife. Baby Harold slept in a car seat beside her. The drive took 4 hours through mountain roads still covered with patches of ice. First National Bank stood on the corner of Main Street and 6th Avenue, a brick building that looked like it had been there since Montana became a state. Sarah walked in at 10:15 in the morning. "I need to access a safety deposit box, number 774. The bank manager, a woman in her 60s named Dorothy Crane, looked at her with curiosity. "That box has been inactive for years. May I ask how you came to have the key?" "It belonged to my uncle, Harold Mitchell. He passed away last month." Dorothy's face changed. Something flickered in her eye. Recognition. Maybe fear. "Harold Mitchell. Yes, I remember him." She stood. "Follow me, please." They walked through the vault doors past rows of metal boxes to a corner where box 774 waited. "I'll need to see identification and the death certificate." Sarah handed over the documents. Dorothy examined them carefully. "Everything seems to be in order." She inserted her master key, waited for Sarah to insert hers, and pulled the box from the wall. "I'll give you privacy. Take as long as you need." She left. Sarah sat alone in the small viewing room, the metal box in front of her. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside were 3 items: a manila envelope thick with papers, a small leather pouch, and a photograph. Sarah picked up the photograph first. It showed 2 men standing in front of a government building. One was Harold Young, maybe 30 years old. The other was a man Sarah didn't recognize. Tall, dark hair, a face that somehow looked familiar. On the back, in Harold's handwriting, Washington, D.C., 1963. "Me and Raymond, the day everything changed." Raymond. Sarah's heart stopped. Raymond Mitchell. Derek's father, Harold's brother. The brother Harold had supposedly been estranged from for 40 years. The brother who had died when Derek was 19. Sarah opened the manila envelope. The first page was a letter handwritten. "Sarah, if you're reading this, then you found the shelter, you found the vault, and someone told you about this box. Good. That means the plan worked. That means you're ready for the truth. The real truth. Not the version I put in the journal. Not the version the government knows. The truth about why I really disappeared. And the truth about your husband's father." Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the paper. "Raymond wasn't just my brother. He was my partner. We worked together on Gold Vault from the beginning. We were the only 2 people who knew the locations of all 12 vaults. When I discovered the theft, which Raymond was the first person I told, he was supposed to help me expose it. Instead, he went to Director Carlson and told him everything. He betrayed me, Sarah, my own brother." The words blurred. Sarah wiped her eyes and kept reading. "But it's more complicated than that. Raymond didn't betray me for money. He betrayed me because they threatened his family. His wife was pregnant with Derek at the time. Carlson told him that if he didn't cooperate, there would be an accident. His wife, his unborn son, gone. Raymond made a choice. He chose his family over the truth. I've spent 40 years hating him for that choice, and 40 years understanding it." Sarah thought of her own children, Lily asleep in Eugene Walsh's living room. Baby Harold in the car seat beside her. What would she have done if someone threatened them? She knew the answer. She would have done anything. Raymond lived with the guilt for 20 years. When Derek was 19, he couldn't take it anymore. He wrote me a letter, the first contact we'd had since 1979. He said he was going to tell Derek everything. He said he was going to make it right. 2 weeks later, he was dead. Heart attack, they said. He was 47 years old and had never had a heart problem in his life. They killed him, Sarah. Just like they killed Marcus and Diana and all the others. They killed my brother because he tried to make it right. Sarah set down the letter. Her whole body was shaking. Derek's father hadn't died of natural causes. He had been murdered by the same people who had threatened Sarah, the same people who might still be watching her. She picked up the leather pouch and opened it. Inside were 2 keys, old brass keys similar to the one Harold had left her, and a small piece of paper with coordinates. 42.7831 degree and 110.652 degree, 38.4821 degree, and 105.734 degree. The other 2 vaults. I never told anyone where they were. Not Raymond. Not the government. Not anyone. They've been looking for 60 years. Now they're yours. Use them wisely, or destroy them. The choice is yours. But whatever you do, don't let them find out you have this. If they know you can lead them to the other vaults, you'll never be safe. Your children will never be safe. Some secrets are better buried. Harold. Sarah stared at the coordinates. 2 more vaults. Billions more in hidden assets. Evidence that could expose corruption going back 6 decades. And a target on her back that would never go away. She gathered everything and put it back in the box. Then she sat there for a long time, thinking. The anonymous caller had been right. Harold's legacy wasn't finished. It was just beginning. At 12:30, Sarah left the bank. She was walking to her car when she noticed the black sedan parked across the street. 2 men inside. Not looking at her. Looking too hard at not looking at her. Her heart rate spiked. She got in her car, started the engine, pulled out slowly. The sedan followed. Sarah drove 3 blocks, turned left, turned right, doubled back. The sedan stayed with her. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Mrs. Mitchell, you seem to be in a hurry. The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Calm. Who is this? Someone who knows you just visited First National Bank. Someone who knows about Box 774. And someone who knows that whatever you found in that box is very, very valuable to some very, very dangerous people. What do you want? I want to help you, but first you need to lose the tail. Take the next right. Then an immediate left into the parking garage. Go to the 3rd level. I'll meet you there. Why should I trust you? Because if I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't be warning you about the men following you. The line went dead. Sarah looked in her rearview mirror. The sedan was still there. She took the next right. Then an immediate left into a parking garage. She spiraled up to the 3rd level, heart-pounding baby Harold still sleeping in his car seat. A woman was waiting by the elevator, mid-40s, short brown hair, a face that looked like it had seen too much. Sarah parked and got out. Mrs. Mitchell. The woman extended her hand. My name is Catherine Wells. I worked with your uncle. Worked with him? He was alone on that mountain for 40 years. Not as alone as he wanted people to think. Catherine glanced toward the ramp. We don't have much time. Those men will figure out where you went soon. Come with me. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me who you are. Catherine sighed. I was NSA for 23 years, same division as Harold. When he disappeared in 1979, I was assigned to find him. I spent 2 years tracking him to Montana, and when I found him, I realized he was right about everything. So instead of turning him in, I helped him. For the past 40 years, I've been his contact in Washington. His eyes and ears, the person who warned him when people were getting too close. Why didn't you come forward during the standoff? Because the people watching Harold were also watching me. If I had shown my face, they would have known I was compromised. I would have been dead within a week. Catherine's voice dropped. The man who called you about the safety deposit box. That was my husband. He died 2 days ago. Car accident. Sarah felt the world tilt. They killed him. They killed him because he talked to you, because he gave you the information about the box. Catherine's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I don't have much time left either. They know I'm involved now, but before they get to me, I need to tell you what Harold couldn't put in writing. What? The 2 vaults, the coordinates in that box. One of them is empty. It was cleaned out in 1982 by the same people who stole from the Montana vault, but the other one is still full, untouched for 60 years. And it contains Something far more valuable than gold. What? Catherine leaned closer. The original Gold Vault Charter, signed by President Kennedy himself, along with the names of everyone who was authorized to access the program, including the names of the people who turned it into their personal piggy bank. She paused. If that document goes public, it's not just careers that end. It's dynasties. Families that have controlled this country for 3 generations. They will do anything to keep that charter buried. Anything. Sarah thought of the black sedan, the men following her, the anonymous threats. Why are you telling me this, Bumblebee? Because Harold trusted you, and because I'm dying. Catherine smiled sadly. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. They don't need to kill me. Time will do it for them. But before I go, I want to see justice done. I want to see the people who murdered my husband held accountable. And you're the only one who can do that now. I have children. I can't put them in danger. I understand. Believe me, I understand. Harold spent 40 years hiding because he couldn't bear the thought of anyone else getting hurt. Catherine reached into her pocket and pulled out a USB drive. This contains everything I've gathered over the past 4 decades. Names, dates, account numbers, a roadmap to every crime they've committed since 1961. Combined with what you found in the vault, it's enough to bring down the whole thing. Why don't you release it yourself? Because I'm a former NSA agent with a dead husband and a cancer diagnosis. They'll discredit me before the first story breaks. But you're different. You're the pregnant widow who stood down the federal government. You're the woman who made the Attorney General negotiate. You're a symbol now. They can't touch you without proving everything you've said is true. Sarah looked at the USB drive. Such a small thing. So much power. Take it, Catherine said. Hide it, and when the time is right, use it. Sarah took the drive. How do I contact you? You don't. After today, I disappear. But I'll be watching, and if you ever need help, leave a message on the Willow Creek Community Bulletin Board, the one outside the hardware store. Use the name Eleanor. I'll find you. Catherine started walking toward the elevator. Wait, why Eleanor? Catherine stopped. Turned. It was Harold's mother's name, the only person he ever truly loved. She smiled. He used to say that if he'd had a daughter, he would have named her Eleanor. I think in his own way, he saw you as the daughter he never had. The elevator doors opened. Catherine stepped inside. Be careful, Sarah, and be brave. The next few months will be the hardest of your life. But if you can survive them, if you can see this through, you'll change history. I believe in you. Harold believed in you. Don't let us down. The doors closed. Sarah stood alone in the parking garage holding a USB drive that could bring down some of the most powerful people in America. Baby Harold stirred in his car seat. She walked back to her car, got in, and started driving. The black sedan was gone. But Sarah knew they would be back. She arrived at the Walsh house at 5:30 that evening. Lily ran to meet her. Mommy, Mrs. Walsh made cookies. Sarah hugged her daughter tight. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Eugene Walsh appeared in the doorway. His face was grim. We need to talk. Something happened while you were gone. Sarah's stomach dropped. What? Come inside. In the living room, Margaret Chen was waiting. Her face was pale. Sarah, there's been a development, a bad one. What kind of development? Margaret handed her a tablet. On the screen was a news article. Gold Vault whistleblower documents revealed as forgeries. Federal investigators claim Mitchell evidence was fabricated. Sarah read the first paragraph, then the second. Then she stopped because she couldn't breathe. They're saying Harold's documents are fake, that I manufactured evidence to extort the government. They released a statement 2 hours ago. The Department of Justice is opening a new investigation into you. But we have a settlement. We have immunity. The immunity was for possessing classified materials, not for fraud. Margaret's voice was tight. They're changing the narrative. Instead of being a whistleblower, you're being painted as a con artist who preyed on her husband's death to extort millions from the government. Sarah felt the room spinning. They can't do this. The documents are real. Thomas verified them. Thomas is being sued for defamation. The Herald pulled his stories this morning. They're calling it a journalistic failure. This is impossible, Eugene Walsh spoke up. It's not impossible. It's strategy. They waited until the settlement was signed, until the money was transferred, until you felt safe. Then they pulled the rug out. Why go through all this if they were just going to turn around and destroy me? Margaret sat down heavily. Because now they can. The settlement included a non-disclosure clause. You can't talk about specifics without violating the agreement. And if you violate the agreement, you lose the immunity. They've put you in a box. Sarah thought of Catherine Wells, the USB drive in her pocket, the coordinates to the second vault. She had more evidence. Evidence they didn't know about. But using it now would mean starting the fight all over again. It would mean putting her children in danger. It would mean becoming a target all over again. What are my options? Margaret and Eugene exchanged glances. You could stay quiet, ride it out, hope the investigation doesn't find anything. And if it does, federal prison, loss of custody, everything you fought for gone. Sarah closed her eyes. She thought of Harold hiding for 40 years. She thought of Raymond murdered for trying to tell the truth. She thought of Catherine's husband killed 2 days ago for making a phone call. How many more people had to die for this secret? How many more families had to be destroyed? She opened her eyes. I'm not going to stay quiet. Sarah, you have to think about this carefully. I have thought about it. They killed Derek's father. They killed Catherine's husband. They've killed at least 17 people that we know of, and they're trying to destroy me because I dared to tell the truth. Sarah's voice was steady now. If I stay quiet, they win. If I hide, they win. The only way to beat them is to keep fighting. With what they've discredited the documents, they've silenced Thomas. They're coming after you. Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out the USB drive. With this, Catherine Wells gave it to me today. It contains 40 years of evidence. Names, dates, account numbers, everything we need. Margaret stared at the drive. Who is Catherine Wells? She was Harold's contact in Washington. She worked for the NSA. She's been helping him for 40 years. Sarah paused. And she's dying. Cancer. She gave me this because she wants to see justice before she goes. Eugene Walsh took the drive carefully as if it might explode. If this is real, if it contains what you say it contains, we could restart everything. That's the plan. But they'll come after you harder than before. Let them. Margaret shook her head. Sarah, I admire your courage, I really do, but you have 2 children. One of them is 2 weeks old. Are you really prepared to put them through another fight? Sarah thought of Lily, of baby Harold, of the future she wanted for them. I'm doing this for them. If I give up now, what am I teaching my daughter? That bullies win, that powerful people can lie and cheat and murder, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. She shook her head. Harold waited 43 years because he couldn't find anyone brave enough to finish what he started. I'm not going to make him wait any longer. The room was silent. Then Eugene Walsh stood up. I've been a lawyer for 43 years, mostly wills and property disputes, small town stuff, but I remember why I went to law school in the first place. He looked at Sarah. I wanted to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. I think I forgot that somewhere along the way. You just reminded me. Margaret sighed. I must be crazy, but I'm in too. We'll need to find new journalists. Thomas is too compromised now. I have an idea about that, Sarah said. Catherine told me to leave a message on the community bulletin board if I needed help. I think it's time to ask. That night, Sarah wrote a message and pinned it to the bulletin board outside the hardware store. Eleanor, the garden needs tending. The weeds are growing. Please, Edfree. The next morning, she found a response. Sarah, go to the Willow Creek Library, section 973.918, third shelf from the bottom, behind the book on Montana history. Sarah went to the library. Behind a dusty book on Montana homesteaders, she found an envelope. Inside was a list of names. 12 journalists from outlets around the world. BBC, Der Spiegel, Le Monde, Al Jazeera, the Toronto Star, publications that couldn't be pressured by the U.S. government. And a note, trust these people. They've been waiting for this story for years. Catherine. Sarah looked at the list. It was time to go international. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and Margaret conducted 12 secret interviews. Each journalist received a portion of the evidence. Each promised to publish simultaneously. The coordination was complex. The security was intense. They used burner phones, encrypted messages, face-to-face meetings in locations without surveillance. And on March 15th, exactly 2 months after Sarah had first descended into Harold's shelter, the story broke worldwide. Not in one outlet, in 12, in 8 languages, across 4 continents. Gold Vault, the 60-year cover-up that stole billions. American government hid Cold War assets while citizens died. Murder, corruption, and lies inside the Gold Vault scandal. Within hours, it was the biggest story on Earth. And this time, there was no containing it. Victor Reese was arrested at his home in Virginia at 6 in the morning. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs played on every network for the next 48 hours. Deputy Attorney General Raymond Foster resigned the same day. The Secretary of the Treasury announced a full investigation. 3 senators called for congressional hearings. And Sarah Mitchell, the homeless widow who had inherited a $500 bunker, became the most famous woman in America. She gave one interview, just one, to a reporter from the BBC who had flown to Montana specifically to meet her. "Mrs. Mitchell, what do you want to say to the people who called you a fraud?" Sarah looked into the camera. "I want to say that the truth doesn't care about power. The truth doesn't care about money. The truth doesn't care how long you've been lying or how many people you've killed to keep your secrets. Eventually, the truth comes out." Harold Mitchell knew that. He spent 43 years waiting for someone to tell his story. I'm just glad I could be the one to do it. What's next for you? Sarah thought about the coordinates in her pocket, the second vault, the evidence that was still hidden. I'm going to raise my children. I'm going to build a foundation to help families like mine, families who lost everything through no fault of their own. And I'm going to make sure that Harold's legacy lives on. And the investigation, the people responsible, Sarah smiled, that's not up to me anymore. That's up to the American people. They know the truth now. What they do with it is their choice. The interview ended, but the story was far from over. 3 days later, Sarah received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Sarah walking into First National Bank in Helena. On the back, in typed letters, "We know about the other vaults. We know about the charter. This isn't over." Sarah stared at the photograph. Then she walked to the fireplace and burned it. They could threaten her. They could follow her. They could try to destroy her. But they would never stop her. Harold had waited 43 years. Sarah would wait as long as it took. April 3rd, 3 weeks after the worldwide story broke. Sarah stood in her kitchen at 6 in the morning, feeding baby Harold, when the phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Mrs. Mitchell, we need to meet." The voice was female, familiar somehow. Who is this, or does someone who knows where the second vault is, someone who's been there? Sarah's blood went cold. "Catherine? Catherine is dead. She passed away 4 days ago. I'm her daughter." A pause. "My name is Elizabeth Wells, and I have something you need to see." They met at noon at a rest stop 40 miles outside Willow Creek. Sarah brought Margaret. Elizabeth came alone. She was young, maybe 28, dark hair like her mother, the same haunted eyes. "My mother told me everything before she died," Elizabeth said. "About Harold, about GOLDVAULT, about you. I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be. She was ready. She said she'd been waiting to die since my father was killed." Elizabeth reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "She wanted you to have this, the location of the second vault, the one that's still full." Sarah opened the folder. Inside were photographs, a cabin in the woods, a steel hatch, coordinates that matched the ones Harold had left her. "This is in Wyoming, near Jackson Hole." "Correct. My mother went there in 1994. She was the only person besides Harold who knew where it was." Elizabeth's voice dropped. "She documented everything. The vault contains approximately $63 million in gold and silver, and the original GOLDVAULT charter with President Kennedy's signature." Margaret leaned forward. Why didn't she expose it herself? Because she was afraid. She watched them kill her colleagues one by one. She watched them destroy her marriage. By the time she had enough evidence, she was too broken to fight. Elizabeth looked at Sarah. "But she believed in you. She said you had something she never had." "What?" "Nothing left to lose." Sarah thought about that. Her husband was dead. Her job was gone. Her home was sold at auction. She had started with nothing and nearly lost everything. But she still had her children. She still had her life. She still had something to lose. "What do you want me to do with this?" "That's up to you, but my mother's dying wish was that the charter be made public. She believed it was the only thing that could truly bring down the people responsible." Elizabeth stood. "I've done my part. The rest is yours." She walked away without looking back. Sarah stared at the folder. $63 million, Margaret said quietly, and the smoking gun that could end all this. It could also get us killed. That's true. Sarah closed the folder. We need to go to Wyoming. April 7th. 4 days later. Sarah, Margaret, and Thomas Wright stood at the edge of a forest in western Wyoming. Baby Harold was with Eugene Walsh back in Montana. Lily was with Walsh's wife. This was too dangerous for children. The coordinates put the vault about 2 miles in, Thomas said, checking his GPS. No roads, no trails, just wilderness. That's why it's been hidden for 60 years. They hiked for 3 hours. Through trees so thick the sunlight barely penetrated. Through streams still frozen from winter. Through terrain that seemed designed to keep people out. At 2:15 in the afternoon, they found it. A clearing. A cabin smaller than Harold's, completely overgrown. And behind it, barely visible under decades of debris, a concrete slab. Sarah's hands shook as she brushed away the leaves. The brass key fit perfectly. The hatch opened with the same groan as the Montana shelter, the same rush of cold air, the same descent into darkness. But this vault was different. It was smaller, maybe 800 square feet, but it was packed floor to ceiling with steel boxes. Thomas counted them. 47 boxes. If each one contains what we think it contains, don't count chickens, Margaret said. Let's see what we're dealing with. Sarah opened the first box. Gold coins? Just like Montana. But more. Many more. The second box. Silver bars. The third box. Currency. Bearer bonds. Treasury notes. Box after box after box. A fortune beyond comprehension. And then in the very last box, in the very back corner, Sarah found it. A leather folder sealed with wax. On the front, stamped in gold letters, Gold Vault Authorization Charter. Top secret. Eyes only. Sarah's hands trembled as she broke the seal. The first page was a letter typed on White House stationery. November 17, 1961. By authority of the President of the United States, the following program is hereby authorized. She turned the page. There at the bottom, in faded blue ink, John F. Kennedy. President Kennedy's signature. Below it, a list of names. The original authorized personnel. The men who had created Gold Vault. And highlighted in Catherine's handwriting 3 names, current living participants. See attached documentation. Sarah flipped to the attachments. Photographs, bank records, transfer orders. 3 men who had been part of Gold Vault in 1961 and were still alive today. One was a retired 4-star general living in Virginia. One was a former CIA director now consulting for defense contractors. And one was a sitting United States Senator. Senator William Harker, chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Oh my God, Margaret whispered. He's been covering this up for 60 years, Thomas said. From inside the government. He's had access to every investigation, every document, every witness. Sarah stared at the photograph. Senator Harker at a state dinner. Smiling, confident, untouchable. He won't be smiling for long. April 10th, 3 days later. Sarah sat in a hotel room in Jackson Hole surrounded by documents, photographs, and encrypted laptops. Margaret was on the phone with lawyers in Washington. Thomas was coordinating with his international contacts. They had moved the most critical evidence out of the vault. The charter, the photographs, the bank records, everything else remained hidden, its location known only to the 3 of them. We have a problem, Margaret said, hanging up the phone. What kind of problem? Senator Harker knows. Knows we found the vault. I don't know how, but he knows. How is that possible? We told no one. Someone's been watching us. Satellite surveillance, maybe, or someone on the ground. Margaret's face was pale. Sarah, he's calling an emergency session of the Intelligence Committee. Tomorrow, he's going to classify the entire Gold Vault investigation as a matter of national security. Once that happens, anyone who releases information about it can be charged with treason. He can't do that. He's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. He can do whatever he wants. Sarah felt the walls closing in. They had the evidence. They had the proof. But if Harker classified everything before they could release it, none of it would matter. How much time do we have? The session is at 10 tomorrow morning. Once he gets the votes, it's over. Then we release everything tonight. Sarah, if we release classified information after it's been formally classified, you could go to prison. We could all go to prison. And if we wait, Harker buries everything and walks free. Harold spent 43 years hiding because he was afraid of exactly this. I'm not going to let his sacrifice be for nothing. Thomas looked up from his laptop. There might be another way. What? We don't release it to the press. We release it to Congress, specifically to the members of the Intelligence Committee who aren't in Harker's pocket. Are there any? A few. Senator Patricia Coleman from Oregon has been suspicious of Harker for years, and Representative James O'Brien from New York has been pushing for oversight reform. Thomas paused. If we can get the evidence to them before tomorrow's session, they can enter it into the congressional record. Once it's in the record, it's protected. Harker can't classify it without admitting it exists. Margaret nodded slowly. It could work, but we'd need to get the evidence to Washington tonight, and we'd need someone they trust to deliver it. Sarah thought about it. I'll go. Sarah, you have a target on your back. If Harker's people find out you're in Washington, then they'll know I'm not afraid, and that's exactly what they need to see. April 11th, 6:14 in the morning, Washington, D.C. Sarah walked through the halls of the Russell Senate office building, a briefcase in her hand and her heart in her throat. She had flown through the night on a red-eye from Jackson Hole. Margaret had stayed behind to coordinate. Thomas had gone to New York to brief his media contacts. Now Sarah was alone in the lion's den. Senator Coleman's office was on the 3rd floor. Sarah had called ahead. The senator was expecting her, but so was someone else. Mrs. Mitchell? Sarah froze. Victor Reese stepped out of an alcove blocking her path. He was wearing a visitor's badge. His face was calm. I thought you were in custody. Released on bail, pending investigation. He smiled, that same cold smile from the standoff. You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Mitchell. Neither should you. Isn't there a restraining order? That's for Montana. This is federal property. He stepped closer. I know why you're here. I know what's in that briefcase. And I'm telling you now, if you walk into that office, you won't walk out. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Senator Harker has resources you can't imagine. He's been protecting this secret for 60 years. He's not going to let a homeless widow from Montana destroy everything he's built. Sarah felt the fear crawling up her spine. Reese was right. She was out of her depth. She was one person against an entire system designed to crush people like her. But she thought of Harold, hiding alone for 43 years. She thought of Derek, killed by a drunk driver who walked free. She thought of her children, sleeping in cars, eating from food banks. She had survived all of that. She could survive this. Get out of my way. Reese didn't move. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She pushed past him and kept walking. Senator Patricia Coleman was waiting in her office. 72 years old. Steel gray hair. Eyes that had seen decades of political warfare. Mrs. Mitchell, I've heard a lot about you. Senator, thank you for seeing me. Victor Reese was outside my office 5 minutes ago. He wanted to warn me about you. What did you tell him? I told him to get the hell out of my building. Coleman smiled slightly. I've been waiting for someone like you for 30 years. Someone brave enough to expose what Harker's been hiding. Please sit down. Show me what you have. Sarah opened the briefcase. For the next 2 hours, she walked Coleman through everything. The Montana vault, the Wyoming vault, Harold's journal, Catherine's evidence, the charter with Kennedy's signature, the proof that Senator Harker had been part of the cover-up since 1961. Coleman listened without interrupting. Her face grew paler with each revelation. When Sarah finished, the senator sat in silence for a long moment. Do you understand what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to tell the truth. I'm asking me to destroy one of the most powerful men in Washington, a man who has allies in every agency, every department, every corner of this government. Yes. And you think a folder full of documents is going to be enough? Sarah met her eyes. My uncle waited 43 years for someone to do what I'm asking you to do. He died alone on a mountain because no one was brave enough to stand up. Catherine Wells died 4 days ago, still waiting for justice. Her husband was murdered for making a phone call. Derek's father was murdered for trying to tell the truth. She paused. How many more people have to die before someone says enough? Coleman was quiet. Then she stood. The Intelligence Committee session starts in 45 minutes. I'm going to need copies of everything, and I'm going to need you to testify. Testify in front of the committee, in front of the committee, in front of Harker, in front of the American people. Coleman's voice was steady. You wanted someone to be brave? Well, so did I. Let's be brave together. At 10:03 that morning, Senator William Harker called the emergency session to order. This committee is convened to discuss the classification of certain materials related to national security. I move that all documents pertaining to the so-called GOLDVAULT program be immediately classified at the highest level and that any further disclosure be treated as a federal crime. I object. Every head in the room turned. Senator Coleman stood. I object to this motion, and I call for a full hearing on the GOLDVAULT program before any classification decision is made. Harker's face went red. Senator Coleman, this is a matter of national security. It's a matter of corruption, Senator Harker, and I have a witness who can prove it. What witness? The chamber doors opened. Sarah Mitchell walked in. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn on the red-eye flight. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. 4 months ago, I inherited a Cold War bunker from my uncle Harold Mitchell. In that bunker, I found evidence of systematic theft, corruption, and murder at the highest levels of this government. Evidence that implicates sitting members of this committee." Harker slammed his gavel. "This is outrageous. This woman has no standing to address this committee." "She has every standing." Coleman held up a folder. "I am entering into the congressional record the following documents: the original Gold Vault authorization charter signed by President Kennedy, transfer orders showing the diversion of federal assets to private accounts, and bank records linking those accounts to Senator William Harker." The room erupted. Harker was on his feet shouting. Other senators were demanding to see the documents. Cameras were flashing. Reporters were scrambling for phones. Sarah stood in the center of it all, calm amid the chaos. She caught Harker's eye. For a moment they just looked at each other, the homeless widow and the powerful senator, David and Goliath. Harker's face was twisted with rage, with fear. He knew it was over. "This committee is adjourned," he stammered. "This committee is adjourned pending review." But it was too late. The documents were in the record. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. April 11th, 8:47 p.m. Sarah sat in Senator Coleman's office watching the news coverage on a small television. Breaking news from Capitol Hill, where bombshell testimony has rocked the Intelligence Committee. Senator William Harker, a 30-year veteran of the Senate, is facing calls for resignation after documents revealed his alleged involvement in a decades-long cover-up. Coleman muted the television. "You did it." "We did it." "No, I've been in Washington for 40 years. I've seen a lot of brave people, but I've never seen anyone do what you did today." Coleman shook her head. "You walked into that chamber knowing Harker could have destroyed you, knowing you could have been arrested, knowing everything you've built could have been taken away, and you did it anyway." "I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice. Most people choose safety. You chose truth." Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. "Mrs. Mitchell?" A man's voice, old, tired. "This is Senator Harker?" Sarah felt her breath catch. "Senator? I wanted you to know something, before the lawyers and the investigators and the hearings. I wanted you to hear it from me." "Hear what?" "Your uncle was right, about everything. The theft, the murders, all of it." A long pause. "I was 23 years old when GOLDVAULT started. I believed I was serving my country. By the time I realized what we had become, it was too late. I had too much to lose." "So you chose to protect yourself instead of telling the truth?" "Yes, God help me, yes." His voice cracked. "I've spent 60 years living with that choice. Every day wondering when someone would find out. Every night dreaming about the people who died to keep my secret." Another pause. "Your uncle spent 43 years waiting for justice. I spent 43 years hoping it would never come. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand something. What I did was wrong, unforgivably wrong, but I wasn't the only one. There are others. Men more powerful than me. Men who won't stop just because I'm exposed." His voice dropped. "You think this is over. It's not. It's just beginning. And the people you've angered, they don't play by the same rules you do." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. The same warning someone should have given your uncle 60 years ago." A final pause. "Be careful, Mrs. Mitchell. Be very careful." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. Coleman was watching her. "What did he say?" "He said it's not over. He said there are others." "There are always others." "He said they won't stop." Coleman nodded slowly. "He's probably right. The kind of corruption we're dealing with, it doesn't die when you expose one person. It adapts. It survives. It waits for the next opportunity." "So what do we do?" "We keep fighting. We keep exposing. We keep telling the truth." Coleman put her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Harold Mitchell waited 43 years. He didn't live to see justice, but you did. You saw it happen. Today, right now, you changed history." Sarah thought about that. Harold hadn't lived to see this day. Neither had Catherine, or her husband, or Derek's father, or the 17 people whose names were in Harold's journal. But their sacrifice had meant something. Their truth had finally been told. At 11:15 that night, Sarah boarded a plane back to Montana. She had been awake for over 60 hours. Her body was exhausted. Her mind was racing. But for the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Peace. Not the peace of victory. The peace of knowing she had done everything she could. Whatever came next, whatever battles still waited, she had kept her promise. She hadn't wasted the shelter, she hadn't wasted the truth, and she hadn't wasted Harold's faith in her. When the plane lifted off, Sarah looked out the window at the lights of Washington disappearing below. "I did it, Harold," she whispered. "I finished what you started." Somewhere, she liked to think he was listening. April 15th, 4 days after the hearing. Sarah landed in Montana at 6 in the morning. Eugene Walsh was waiting at the airport with both children. Lily ran to her mother. "Mommy, I saw you on TV." Sarah dropped to her knees and held her daughter tight. "You did?" "Mrs. Walsh let me watch. You were talking to those old people in the big room." Lily pulled back, her face serious. "Were you scared?" "Yes, sweetheart, I was very scared." "But you did it anyway." "Yes, I did it anyway." Lily nodded solemnly. "That's what brave people do. They're scared, but they do it anyway." Sarah felt tears burning her eye. "Where did you learn that? From you, Mommy?" Eugene Walsh stepped forward, baby Harold in his arms. "Welcome home, Sarah. The whole town is talking about you. Good talking or bad talking? Good, very good." He handed her the baby. "There's something else, something you should see." They drove to Willow Creek. The main street was lined with people, hundreds of them, holding signs, cheering. "What is this?" "They've been waiting since yesterday. Word got out you were coming home." Sarah stepped out of the car. The crowd surged forward. A woman grabbed her hand. Thank you for telling the truth." A man called out, "My father worked for the government in the 60s. He always said something was wrong. Now I know he was right." An elderly woman, tears streaming down her face. "My husband was a whistleblower. They destroyed his career. He died thinking no one would ever believe him. You proved him right." Sarah was overwhelmed. These weren't reporters or politicians or lawyers. These were ordinary people, Americans who had been lied to for 60 years and finally learned the truth. "I didn't do this alone," she said, her voice cracking. "Harold Mitchell started this. Catherine Wells carried it forward. Margaret Chen and Thomas Wright risked everything. I just finished what they began." A voice from the crowd. "You're too modest, Sarah. You could have taken the money and disappeared. You didn't. That's what makes you different." Sarah recognized the voice. She looked up. Her mother was standing at the edge of the crowd. Patricia Dawson, the woman who had refused to help when Sarah was homeless. The woman who had blamed her for marrying Derek. The woman who had hung up the phone and left her daughter to sleep in parking lots. Sarah felt her whole body go rigid. "Hello, Sarah." "Mother, what are you doing here?" "I saw you on television. The hearing. The testimony." Patricia's voice was different, smaller. "I saw what you did. What you've been through." "You saw, but you weren't there. You weren't there when I needed you." "I know." Patricia's eyes were wet. "I know I wasn't. And I'm not here to ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm here because I wanted to see you. I wanted to tell you that I was wrong, about Derek, about your choices, about everything." "Is that supposed to make it better?" "No, nothing can make it better, but I had to say it." Patricia took a step forward. "When your father left, I became hard. I thought if I didn't depend on anyone, I couldn't be hurt. I raised you to be strong, but I forgot to teach you that strength isn't the same as cruelty." Sarah felt the old anger rising. The nights in the parking lot, the hunger, the fear, all of it came flooding back. "You told me to call Child Protective Services. You told me to give up my daughter." "I know." "Do you know what that felt like, to hear your own mother say those words?" "I can imagine." "No, you can't. You can't possibly imagine." Sarah's voice broke. "I was 7 months pregnant, homeless, desperate, and you hung up on me." The crowd had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Patricia stood there taking it, not defending herself, not making excuses. "You're right," she said finally. "I can't imagine, and I can't change what I did. But I can tell you this, watching you on that television, standing up to those powerful men telling the truth when everyone was trying to silence you, I have never been more proud of anyone in my life." Her voice cracked. "You became the woman I should have been, the mother I should have been. And I am so sorry it took me this long to see it." Sarah wanted to stay angry. The anger was familiar, safe. But then she looked at Lily, at baby Harold. She thought about what she wanted to teach her children, about forgiveness, about second chances, about the difference between holding grudges and setting boundaries. "I'm not ready to forgive you," Sarah said slowly. I don't know if I ever will be. I understand. But I'm willing to try, slowly, carefully, for Lily's sake, for Harold's sake. She paused. Not for yours. Patricia nodded. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. They stood there for a long moment, mother and daughter, strangers who shared blood. Then Lily tugged on Sarah's hand. Mommy, is that my grandma? Sarah looked at her daughter, innocent, hopeful, unaware of the history between these two women. Yes, sweetheart, that's your grandmother. She looks sad. She is sad. She made some mistakes. Did she say sorry? Yes, she did. Then we should forgive her. That's what you told me. When someone says sorry and means it, we should try to forgive them. Sarah felt her heart crack open, out of the mouths of babes. You're right, Lily, we should try. April 22nd, 1 week later. Senator Harker resigned from the Senate. The FBI opened a formal investigation into GOLDVAULT. 2 more former officials were arrested. The charter was authenticated by independent historians and entered into the National Archives. Sarah watched it all unfold from the cabin in Willow Creek. The media wanted interviews. She declined most of them. The politicians wanted photo opportunities. She declined all of them. What she wanted was simpler. She wanted to raise her children. She wanted to honor Harold's memory. She wanted to build something that would help people like her. Margaret Chen called on the 23rd. The settlement funds have been released, $18 million, plus the recovery fee from the Wyoming vault, another $12 million. She paused. Sarah, you're wealthy now, truly wealthy. I don't feel wealthy. That's because wealth isn't about money. It's about freedom, and you've bought yourself more freedom than most people ever dream of. What should I do with it? That's up to you, but if I were you, I'd start by honoring the people who made this possible. Harold, Catherine, all the whistleblowers who were silenced. Build something in their memory. Sarah thought about that. I have an idea. May 1st, 9 days. 9 days later. Sarah filed the paperwork for the Mitchell Foundation for Family Stability. Its mission: emergency housing, legal support, and financial assistance for families facing homelessness. No waiting lists, no bureaucracy, no children sleeping in cars. She funded it with $10 million from the settlement. The first office opened in Willow Creek, the second in Las Vegas, in the same neighborhood where Sarah had once been a patient advocate at St. Vincent's. Within a month, they had helped 53 families. Within 3 months, 212. Thomas Wright wrote about it for the Herald. Sarah Mitchell could have taken her money and disappeared. Instead, she's using it to save other families from the same fate she barely escaped. That's the kind of person she is. That's the kind of leader America needs. June 15th, 2 months after the hearing, Sarah received a letter from the Department of Justice. Dear Mrs. Mitchell, in recognition of your contributions to exposing corruption within federal programs, the Department of Justice is pleased to inform you that all investigations into your conduct have been closed. No charges will be filed. You are free to live your life without fear of prosecution. Sincerely, Attorney General James Morrison. Sarah read the letter 3 times. She was free. Finally, truly free. That night, she went down into the shelter for the first time in weeks. The vault was empty now. The gold was gone. The documents were in government custody or the National Archives. All that remained was Harold's desk, his journal, and the memories of the man who had built this place. Sarah sat at the desk and opened the journal to a random page. August 3rd, 1987. 28 years alone. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. I could have told someone. I could have trusted someone. Instead, I've spent my life waiting for a day that might never come. But then I think about what they did to Marcus, to Diana, to all the others, and I know I couldn't have lived with myself if I had stayed silent. Some secrets are worth dying for. Some truths are worth a lifetime of hiding. Sarah turned the page. December 25th, 1995. Christmas alone again. I've lost count of how many. But this year feels different. This year I have hope. My nephew Derek got married last summer. His wife is a nurse, a helper, someone who takes care of people. I've never met her, but the investigator says she's kind, strong, brave. Maybe when I'm gone, she'll be the one. Maybe she'll finish what I started. I have to believe that. Otherwise, what was it all for? Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. Harold had been waiting for her, specifically for her. For 29 years, he had believed she would come, and she had. I finished it, Harold, she whispered. I finished what you started. The silence in the shelter felt different now. Not empty. Full of history, full of sacrifice, full of hope. Sarah closed the journal and climbed the ladder one last time. July 4th, Independence Day. The town of Willow Creek threw a parade, the first one in 15 years. Sarah was asked to be the Grand Marshal. She declined, but she agreed to ride in one of the floats with Lily and baby Harold. Eugene Walsh gave a speech in the town square. 60 years ago, a young man named Harold Mitchell made a choice. He chose truth over safety. He chose justice over comfort. He chose to spend his entire life protecting a secret that could change history. Most of us will never know that kind of courage. But Sarah Mitchell does. She inherited not just a shelter, but a legacy, and she honored that legacy in ways none of us could have imagined. The crowd cheered. Sarah held her children close and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Belonging. This small town in the middle of Montana. These ordinary people who had stood with her when the federal government came calling. They were her family now. And she was home. August 23rd, 4 months after the hearing. Sarah's mother came to visit. It was awkward at first. Stilted conversations, long silences, years of hurt that couldn't be erased by a single apology. But slowly things began to change. Patricia played with Lily in the yard. She held baby Harold and sang him lullabies. She helped Sarah cook dinner and didn't criticize anything. On the third day, they went for a walk together, just the two of them. "I want to tell you something," Patricia said. "Something I should have told you years ago." "What?" "When your father left, I didn't just become hard. I became afraid. Afraid that if I loved anyone too much, they would leave me. So I pushed people away, including you." She stopped walking. "Especially you." "Why especially me?" "Because you reminded me of him. Your stubbornness, your independence, your refusal to do what you were told." Patricia's voice cracked. "Every time I looked at you, I saw the man who broke my heart, and I punished you for it." Sarah felt the old wound open, but this time it didn't hurt as much. "I'm not my father." I know that now. You're so much better than he ever was." Patricia took her hand. "I'm sorry, Sarah, for all of it, for the coldness, for the judgment, for not being there when you needed me most." "Why now?" "Why tell me this now?" "Because I'm 72 years old, because I've wasted too much time already, because I want to know my grandchildren before it's too late." Shh. Patricia met her eyes. "And because watching you stand up to those men in Washington showed me what real strength looks like. Not hardness, not cruelty, courage. The courage to love, the courage to trust, the courage to forgive." Sarah thought about everything she had been through, the parking lots, the hunger, the fear, the betrayal, and she thought about what she wanted for her children. A family, a real family. Not perfect, not without scars, but together. "I'm still angry," Sarah said. "I don't know if that will ever completely go away." "I understand. But I'm willing to try, really try, not just for Lily and Harold, for me." Patricia squeezed her hand. "That's all I ask." September 14th. 1 year since Derek's death. Sarah drove to Las Vegas. She went to the cemetery where Derek was buried. She brought flowers, white roses, his favorite. Lily stood beside her holding baby Harold's hand even though he couldn't walk yet. "Hi, Daddy," Lily said softly. "I miss you." Sarah knelt by the headstone. "Hey, Derek, it's been a year. A lot has happened. You wouldn't believe it if I told you." She laughed softly. "Actually, knowing you, you'd probably believe every word. You always said I was capable of anything." She told him about the bunker, about Harold, about the gold and the documents and the standoff. She told him about the hearing in Washington and Senator Harker's resignation and the foundation she had started in his uncle's name. "Your Uncle Harold was a hero, Derek. You never got to know him, but he knew you. He watched over you your whole life, and when you were gone, he watched over me." Her voice broke. "He saved us, Derek. When no one else would help us, when your own grandmother turned us away, Harold was there. Even after death, he was there." Lily tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy is Daddy in heaven." "Yes, sweetheart, Daddy's in heaven." "Can he see us?" "I think so. I think he's watching over us right now." "Then he knows about the underground house and the gold and the bad men who tried to hurt us?" "He knows everything." Lily nodded seriously. "Good. I want him to be proud of us." "He is, baby. He's so proud." Sarah stood up. She placed her hand on the headstone one last time. "I love you, Derek. I'll always love you. And I promise I'll raise our children to know who you were. The kind of man you were. The kind of father you would have been." She took Lily's hand. Let's go home, sweetheart. To Montana? To Montana. October 3rd, 6 months after the hearing. The final report on the Gold Vault investigation was released. Total theft, $4.7 billion over 60 years. 17 confirmed murders. 23 confirmed cover-ups. 14 current and former government officials indicted. 3 committed suicide before trial. 4 made plea deals. 7 went to prison, including Victor Reese. Senator Harker died of a heart attack 3 weeks before his trial was scheduled to begin. Sarah read the report in the cabin, baby Harold sleeping in her arms. Justice. Imperfect, incomplete, but justice nonetheless. Harold had waited 43 years for this day. He hadn't lived to see it, but his faith hadn't been misplaced. November 17th. The anniversary of the original Gold Vault charter. Sarah held a small ceremony at the shelter. Just family and close friends. Eugene Walsh and his wife. Margaret Chen. Thomas Wright. Elizabeth Wells, who had become a regular visitor. And Patricia, who had moved to a small house in Willow Creek to be closer to her grandchildren. They gathered around the hatch that led down into Harold's bunker. 63 years ago today, Sarah said, President Kennedy signed the charter that created Gold Vault. He believed he was protecting America's future. He couldn't have known that his signature would set in motion 60 years of corruption and tragedy. She held up a bronze plaque. This plaque will be mounted above the hatch. It reads, In memory of Harold Raymond Mitchell, 1931-2024, patriot, whistleblower, guardian of truth. He waited 43 years for someone to believe him. We finally do. Eugene Walsh stepped forward to mount the plaque. When it was secure, Sarah turned to the small gathering. Harold spent his life alone because he refused to be silent. He gave up everything, family, career, freedom, to protect a truth that no one else would acknowledge. We can't give him back what he lost, but we can honor his sacrifice by never forgetting what he did. She looked at Lily, who was holding baby Harold's hand. And we can teach the next generation that some things are worth fighting for, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when everyone tells you to give up. Margaret Chen raised a glass. To Harold Mitchell, may his truth live forever. To Harold, everyone echoed. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. The history, the sacrifice, and the hope. December 25th. Christmas Day. For the first time in 43 years, the cabin above Harold's shelter was full of life. Sarah had decorated a tree. Lily had hung ornaments she made herself. Baby Harold, now 8 months old, crawled around trying to eat the wrapping paper. Patricia was there helping in the kitchen. Eugene Walsh and his wife stopped by with pie. Margaret called from Denver. Thomas sent a gift basket from New York. After dinner, after presents, after Lily finally fell asleep clutching her new teddy bear, Sarah stepped outside. The Montana sky was vast and cold and full of stars. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The parking lots, the despair, the email that changed everything. 1 year ago, she had been sleeping in a car with $7 to her name. Now she had a home, a family, a purpose, and a legacy that would outlive them all. The door opened behind her. Mommy, Lily's voice was sleepy. What are you doing? Just looking at the stars, sweetheart. Lily came to stand beside her. Uncle Harold used to look at the stars too, didn't he? Yes, I think he did. Do you think he's up there with Daddy? Sarah smiled. I think so. I think they're both watching over us. That's good, Lily yawned. I'm glad we found the underground house, Mommy. Me too, baby, me too. And I'm glad we're not in the car anymore. We'll never be in the car again, I promise. Lily hugged her mother's leg. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything in the world. They stood there together, mother and daughter, looking up at the infinite sky. And somewhere in the silence, Sarah could have sworn she heard Harold's voice. You didn't waste it, Sarah. You didn't waste the shelter. You didn't waste the truth. And you didn't waste the love. Well done. She smiled. Well done. January 15th. 1 year since Harold's death. Sarah went down into the shelter one final time. She had decided to seal it. Not forever, but for now. The vault was empty. The documents were safe. The mission was complete. She sat at Harold's desk and wrote a letter. To whoever finds this shelter next. My name is Sarah Mitchell. In 2024, I inherited this place from my uncle Harold Mitchell. Inside, I found evidence of a 60-year conspiracy that changed American history. But more importantly, I found hope. Harold built this shelter because he believed in preparation. He believed that the worst could happen and that we should be ready for it. But he also believed in something else. He believed that the truth would eventually win. He believed that someone would come who was brave enough to tell it. He believed in me before he ever met me. I hope I honored that belief. If you're reading this, you're probably facing your own storm, your own impossible choice, your own moment when giving up seems easier than going on. Don't give up. The truth is worth fighting for. Your family is worth fighting for. Hope is worth fighting for. Harold waited 43 years. I only had to wait a few months, but we both learned the same lesson. The shelter isn't underground. It's in the people who love us. It's in the truth we refuse to abandon. It's in the legacy we leave behind. Don't waste the shelter. Don't waste the truth. And whatever you do, don't waste your one wild and precious life. With love and hope, Sarah Mitchell. January 15th, 2025. She sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it in Harold's desk drawer. Then she climbed the ladder, closed the hatch, and locked it. The key went into a safety deposit box in Helena, the same box where Harold had kept his secrets. Someday, someone else would find it. Someday the shelter would be needed again. But for now, it could rest. Its mission was complete. February 3rd. 1 year since Sarah received the inheritance email. She woke early, 5:30 in the morning. The same time she used to wake up in the Walmart parking lot, cold and afraid and wondering how she would survive another day. But this morning was different. This morning she woke up in a warm bed in a cabin she owned with her 2 children sleeping in the next room, and a future stretching out before her like an open road. She made coffee. She watched the sunrise over the mountains, and she thought about everything that had happened. The homeless widow who inherited a $500 bunker. The woman who found $42 million in gold. The mother who stood down the federal government. The daughter who finally forgave her mother. The survivor who became a symbol. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like yesterday. She heard footsteps behind her. Lily appeared, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, you're up early." "I know, sweetheart, I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how much things have changed. About how scared I was a year ago. About how grateful I am now." Lily climbed into her lap. "I'm grateful too." "For what?" "For you, for baby Harold, for Grandma." She paused. "And for Uncle Harold, even though I never met him." "He would have loved you, Lily. He would have loved you so much." "I know," Lily smiled. "I can feel him sometimes. When I'm in the underground house, it's like he's still there, watching over us." Sarah held her daughter close. "He is, sweetheart. He always will be." The sun rose higher over the mountains. A new day, a new year, a new life. Sarah Mitchell had started with nothing. She had been given a $500 shelter, and she had turned it into a legacy that would last forever. Not because of the gold, not because of the evidence, because of the truth. The truth that some things are worth fighting for. The truth that family isn't just blood, it's choice. The truth that hope can survive even the darkest night. The truth that one person with enough courage can change the world. Harold Mitchell had believed that. Sarah Mitchell had proved it. And now sitting in her cabin with her daughter in her lap and her son sleeping in the next room and her whole life stretching out before her, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The shelter had been worth $500. But what it contained, the truth, the hope, the love, was priceless. And that was the real inheritance. Not gold, not money, not power. Love. Love that waits 43 years. Love that crosses generations. Love that never gives up. That was Harold's gift. That was Sarah's legacy. And that was the truth that would echo through history long after the gold was spent and the documents were forgotten and the names of the corrupt had faded into dust. Love endures. Truth prevails. And hope, stubborn and unbreakable, always finds a way home. Sarah Mitchell smiled as the sun rose over Montana. She was home. Finally, completely, eternally home. And nothing would ever take that away from her again.